Did Israel just dupe Trump? Check out this clip over here with Glenn Beck. We'll watch it together, then talk about it. But first, hit subscribe in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch.
There's something that's just happened that is remarkably historic. I want to read it to you. President Trump, this comes from the Director of National Intelligence and National Counterterrorism Center, Joseph Kent. President Trump, after much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. I know. This is so damaging. This is Pentagon Papers stuff. This is as important as the Pentagon Papers. This is going to possibly change the course of America. I support the values of foreign policies that you campaigned on in 16, 2020, 2024, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into a never-ending war. You demonstrated this by killing Soleimani and defeating ISIS. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your American First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States. This is incredible. You can say a lot of things, but to say that Donald Trump is a dupe and has been duped by a foreign power because he wasn't smart enough to figure it out is absolutely insane. Insane. Deceive you that you should strike now when there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and it is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into a disaster Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. This is going to set the world on fire. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times, and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray you will reflect upon what you are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can't. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation. You can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation. Joseph Kent. This is a senior official in intelligence saying in real time that the United States has entered a war under false pretenses, that Israel got us into the first war in Iraq, and now they duped the American president into fighting this war. This is going to fracture public trust. This is the worst letter that could be done that I have ever seen. If you want to hold, if you're trying to win an election, this is the worst thing. Our allies now are going to be questioning our judgment. Our enemies are going to exploit this like crazy. The war effort now, if you don't think you have given aid and comfort to Iran, you just have. You've told them exactly what I'm telling you right now. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. I don't know how you survive things like this because this guy has just taken gasoline and thrown tanks of it into a bonfire that was already burning. And that fire that is burning is not the Islamic fires, but the Jews are bad fires. This is probably the most serious internal breaks over a war decision in modern history. Never seen anything like this. And there's going to have to be investigations on it. And, I hope we get to the truth on this. But now we've just added that one to the fire. That was already burning out of control, I thought. Jason, your analysis on this?
I think that we need an immediate statement from DNI Tulsi Gabbard immediately to go into the details that they probably did not even want to go into at the moment, but they're going to have to now. This is incredibly irresponsible, and it needs to be cleared up 5 minutes ago. They need to do that. They need to go into rapid damage control mode and explain exactly point by point and counter everything Joe Kent just said. Now, I don't have a problem with, so Joe Kent he's always seemed to me to be kind of like a very libertarian voice within the administration. And his wife dying in Syria, I'm sure that pushed him further towards the no war camp.
Sure it has.
And I can get that. I like having, an anti-Bolton style group of people within there. We need those voices. But this is so irresponsible. You might as well just say that, I read the protocols of the elders of Zion and, the Jews control the world. He basically said that.
He basically said that. Jews control the United States of America.
Come on.
If he would have just been over here, one direction, it would have went in one side of his head and just taken him out. Who would have been the president of the United States if that would have happened? Kamala Harris. So is what Glenn Beck is uncovering here simply anti-Semitism? Is this simply that Joe Kent has joined the bandwagon of saying that the Israelis control the American politics and control the media and control Trump? I want to show you another clip of Glenn Beck analyzing his theory on what's going on, and then we'll talk about the Jewish perspective on how we see things unfolding. So stick with us to the end. This will get exciting. Check this out.
As I was thinking this through yesterday, it occurred to me, and I went and I did some homework. Has this ever happened in history before? And yes, it has. And so I want to present a theory, because the story being told to you right now is really neat. It's really simple. It has a villain and a victim, a manipulator and a man who is supposedly led. It says one leader whispered into the other, lies. And the other leader was duped into it. Oh my gosh, I've got to follow. History almost never works that way. Nations don't drift into wars of this scale because somebody whispered a lie alone. Most times, if not almost all times, it's because pressure has been building, sometimes for years, sometimes for generations, until the moment arrives when someone decides the cost of waiting is greater than the cost of acting. And to understand this, you have to begin where the pressure is the greatest. Where is the pressure greatest in the world when it comes to Iran? Some will say, well, it's Iran because they're being bombed. No, Israel. Israel looks at Iran differently than the West does. The West Iran is a policy problem. Israel sees Iran as a deadline. I wrote a chalkboard today and just divvied it up into three: Iran, Israel, and the U.S. We're big Satan, but who do they promise to kill first? Little Satan, right? Little Satan. That's Israel. We're big Satan. They have said over and over, the Israelis, the Jews, will burn in the fires of the Islamic fury. And as they're saying that, they're building nukes. They have 400 to 600 kilograms. That's about 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium. and they're 12ers. You'll really understand this if you've been following it all on the program. This is what the Iranians believe. The Iranian regime has spent decades funding proxies, building capability, repeatedly, openly, consistently saying and acting in the way that follow their words that Israel will cease to exist, that the Jews will die. Now, that can be rhetoric to us here on this side of the planet. But if you're an Israeli and you've got a state just, a California distance away, and that state is the size of 2 Texas, you look at things differently. History has taught them something that Americans have just the luxury of debating. When someone tells you repeatedly they intend to destroy you and kill you, eventually you have to decide whether to believe them or not. So inside Israel, this is not a conversation about strategy. When do we go in? Well, I don't know. Is it going to cost us more for gasoline? That's not. This is a question of survival for the Israelis in their mind. So when a nation believes its survival is at stake, especially a nation that was built so the Jew can survive, it doesn't wait for global consensus. It acts. And it's happened before. 1981, Israel struck Iraq's nuclear reactor without permission. 2007, it destroyed Syria's quietly, decisively, because in their doctrine, if a threat is existential, delay is the most dangerous choice of all. So now, I want you to imagine this mindset, and it's really hard. You have to imagine, to get in this mindset, imagine that Mexico had been bombing us over and over again, had killed thousands of Americans, and they were across the border saying all the time, we're going to kill every one of you. And then they're building nuclear weapons. And your intelligence, forget about anybody else, your intelligence says they're building missiles and they have 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium, which will be enough missiles to wipe us off the face of the earth 1,000 times over. And they keep saying they're going to do it. And because you're living here and the Mexicans have been bombing, they have invaded, and they've killed thousands of us while saying this. It's different. So Benjamin Netanyahu, let's say he comes to the White House, which he did, sits across from the American president, and the intelligence is laid out. And the clock, real or perceived, is ticking. And he makes it clear. We're going in with or without you because we believe this intelligence. We're going in. And Mr. President, we're going to take care of this once and for all. We can't do it the way you can. But, Mr. President, if we wait and they get a nuke, what's your reaction? Your reaction will be, I'm not firing a nuke. We have to lay off them now. I will not be the first to nuke. But we believe that they will nuke us first. So if they're close to a nuke and we can't finish it, we will nuke them. It is in our best interest. My job is to protect the Israeli people and Israel. And they are not some sort of a math problem like they are in the rest of the world. They're a real threat to us. This is not theater. This has happened before. So now the decision shifts. Not whether Israel will act, but is the United States going to have any influence over how that action unfolds? Because the president has spent all of this time trying to tie the Middle East together. He was going to go in at some point. He had said it, I'm going in. But you have an ally now that is saying, we know you're going to go in, but the job has to be finished. And if you don't do it, that's okay. We're fine. We'll do it. But we're going to pulverize them. We will destroy their ability. And the president knows that will put the entire Middle East into chaos because we just learned from Iraq and Afghanistan. Please let us do it our way. Mr. President, we will go in with you. We have the same goal here. But this is where the story changes, and it's not being duped because we were going to do it anyway. But things change. We've seen this moment before. 1956, during the Suez crisis, Israel, Britain, France moved to seize the canal. They believed they were acting rationally, even that they had to do it. Eisenhower saw something else. He saw a chain reaction that could pull the Soviet Union and fracture the world. So America stepped in, not against its enemies, but against our own allies of France, and forced them to stop. Everybody's like, why are we getting involved in that? To force them to stop so we could control the situation. 1973, Yom Kippur War. United States rushed to support Israel when it was on the brink. But Israel, it began to win decisively. Washington grew concerned that victory might trigger something larger. So Henry Kissinger worked to slow the momentum and to contain, not defeat, but contain success. 1962, Cuban Missile Crisis. Greatest pressure was not just between the two nations, but within one. The military here in the United States urging immediate strikes. Hit them hard, hit them now. John F. Kennedy chose something else. He chose the path that restrained his own side as much as it confronted the Soviets, because he understood how quickly action could become annihilation. So the pattern is here. This is the way we do things. When allies feel existential danger, they move quickly, and they're willing to go further than anyone else is comfortable with because they believe they are the target. We don't believe that. Every president has said that they believe that, but nobody has had the stones to do anything. Why? Because you don't believe that. The American people don't see this as an actual threat. When a superpower sees the broader system, the dominoes, the alliances, the escalation ladder, it moves to control the scope of that action, and sometimes from the outside, but sometimes from within. So consider this possibility, just a theory. The United States didn't enter this conflict because it was misled. It's because we face the choice of two wars. One, it could influence that we were going to do anyway, and one, it could not. If America stands aside, Israel acts alone. And when a nation believes its survival, its very survival is on the line, it doesn't calibrate for global stability. It calibrates for certainty. Wipe it out. That means what? Wider targets, deeper strikes, faster escalation, fewer constraints, oil fields on fire. What happened just last week? They hit oil fields. We were being led by the nose by Benjamin Netanyahu. That makes no sense. If we were duped into the war and we're fighting Israel's war, why then would President Trump say, stop it? Stop hitting the oil fields. They have different goals than we do. We came in, and quite honestly, again, imagine we've been hit by Mexico and NATO decided to step in and said, okay, we'll help you solve this problem because it's a problem for us too, because Mexico and the cartels are coming for us next. So we'll do it. But Europe wouldn't see that as a threat to Europe. Germans would be like, it's America. Who cares? We're not involved in that. Why would we get involved? Just like we do. They say the same thing. And if we saw that Europe was starting to fold and Europe was like starting to say, we don't want anything to do with this war. Why are we in this war? We got to get out of this war. And we saw that maybe NATO was starting to weaken and they were not going to finish the job. What the hell do you think we would do? We would do exactly what Israel is doing. We would burn Mexico to the ground if we had to, if we believed that they were going to burn us to the ground.
See, the question that Glenn Beck is addressing over here is why Trump gets involved with this war. The question isn't if this war is a just war. In fact, Glenn Beck rightfully says that Joe's resignation was simply his siding for some reason. As Jeff points out that his wife was killed in Syria, that he's anti-war, but for some reason Joe flips and he becomes part of the group of people who say that this is Israel's war and America should not be involved. And then Glenn Beck shows how this war is similar to a war with Mexico, where there's an existential threat to the United States with a nuclear Iran. But this doesn't really answer the question of why Trump would get involved in this war. And Glenn Beck, rightfully so, shows how a nuclear Iran wants to annihilate America. And it's impossible to ignore something that happened to Donald Trump. You see, when the bullet nipped his ear, something switched in him. And I want to show you this clip of Rabbi Baruch Rosenblum. We're going to look at what he says. He is a well-established rabbi in Israel who is loved and admired and followed by most all religious Jewish people in Israel.
Donald Trump.
Mr. Donald Trump.
שליטה. מה איתו?
His Honor.
הלך לדרוש בפנסילבניה.
Went to Pennsylvania to talk. There's a place called Pennsylvania. He goes to speak there. He knows how to speak well. Standing on a rooftop not far from there, there's somebody who was sent by Iran and shoots. What happens to the bullet? Takes out his ear. Like it says in the verse that you pierce the ear of the slave. He gets a pinch on his ear. He went with a huge plaster. He went with a huge bandage on his ear. And I said to myself, God of the universe, what's going on over here? How is it possible that somebody could shoot at the president and the distance between his ear? What's the distance between the ear and the head? It's like 1 millimeter. If he would have just been over a hair, one direction, it would have went in one side of his head and just taken him out. Who would have been the president of the United States if that would have happened? Kamala Harris. She would have been the president. Anybody know who Kamala Harris is? That would have been Kamala Harris right now in office. What did God do? Tick. Right next to his ear. I said, God of the universe, you saved Trump? I said, let's just wait. Let's just wait. There'll come a day and he'll pay back the Iranians for what happened to his ear. Just like it says, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So he sent to their bombers, the B-12 bombers. And he's going to give them lots of bombs that they should have for many years. Why did this all happen? By the way, what you're hearing in the background is a siren alert for an incoming missile from Iran. God runs the world. God sent a message to Trump from Iran to take off a piece of his ear.
קרה לו שום דבר, רק
And
שריטה,
nothing happened
קצת
to
יוד
Trump.
אדום, ושלום על ישראל. אבל כל זה נעשה בשביל מה?
Why'd this all happen?
ריבונו של עולם אומר לי, יש תוכנית.
God said, I have a plan.
מה התוכנית שלי?
What's my plan?
אני בעזרת השם יביא למצב שטראמפ ייבחר, אומר חכה.
I'm going to make it that Trump will get elected.
רצו להרוג אותי. איך כתוב? נפש תחת נפש.
How does the Bible say? Tit for tat.
אני בעזרת השם ישלם להם.
I will pay for
אני
this.
הורידו לי את האוזן, אני אוציא להם את העין, לא רק את
Trump said, they took out my ear, I'm going to take out their eye.
האוזן. אני אלמד אותם דרך ארץ.
I'm going to teach them a lesson.
פירוש הדבר שהקדוש ברוך הוא,
What
יש
does
לו
this all
פאזל,
mean? That God has a puzzle. God has a plan.
יש לו תוכנית.
He has a plan.
התוכנית הזאת, אנחנו חלק מהתוכנית.
And we are all part of this plan.
מה אתה חושב שהקדוש ברוך הוא יעזוב אותך?
What do you think? God is going to abandon us?
בשום פנים ואופן לא.
Never. See, in this clip, what you see is that God controls the hearts of kings. How does he do this? By switching their heart. And really, what we're ignoring with all the geopolitical analysts is that we're dealing with people. And a person, his heart, is controlled by God. God can determine and decide what Donald Trump will think. When that bullet nearly missed his head, imagine for a second that a person almost got killed. That's a life-changing moment. And at that moment, he realized that he had a mission. Now, I don't understand why he thought this mission was to save Israel, but it's impossible to ignore that he himself understands the importance of the Jewish people winning this war and the messianic times that are unfolding. Because to ignore that would be to ignore the entire narrative. To create this about the Jews controlling the media or controlling Trump, or even to make this into a geopolitical land grab, would be missing the entire point. Islamic Jihad in the Shiite version of Iran, where world domination in the Twelvers. The Twelvers believe that the last prophet who will come will crawl out of a well and create the final war. The final war will be against the Jews and against America. And they say this clearly in their doctrine. And unless we understand this, it would be impossible to understand what's really going on in this war. And that brings us to the final point that I want to make. It's very interesting to try to analyze why kings do what they do. What motivates people? You see, Joe Kent, what motivated him to resign and lose his position and make such a statement, which is quite crazy to make such a statement, that he is involved in security, national security, and he's saying that America has put itself on the line and made a decision which was, I got to take his word for at least something. He must be saying that it's not 100% accurate. There's something more happening over here. Now, if in fact Trump is acting on a gut feeling, that would be very Trump-like. Trump likes to act from the gut. And God knew that Trump was the only type of person who can actually pull this off. And Trump himself said, I'm the only one who would ever do something like this. But this war, the way this war is going right now, shows that the entire outcome will be controlled by God. The same way Trump was literally spared, and he felt that his life was spared so that he could change history by taking out the regime that is the root of evil in the world. And when this happens, that will usher in a new era for not just Israel, but for the entire Middle East and for America. And Israel will be looked upon as the country who has freed the world from this evil. If this message resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Shavua Tov, and may we witness in the coming redemption of the Jewish Messiah, who comes to bring peace to the world and to unify the entire world towards the message of God, that repentance and repentance alone is what brings salvation. Thank you for watching. Have a great week. Until next time, Shalom from just outside Jerusalem.